and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in Somalia, where police have confirmed the death of 8 civilians in a car bombing in the capital, Mogadishu. Some 17 other people are said to have been wounded, including 13 children from a school near the blast scene. An Al-Shabaab suicide bomber driving an explosive-laden vehicle targeted a convoy of a private security firm which is contracted to protect the UN.
Militant group Al-Shabaab have claimed responsibility for a huge blast in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, which witnesses and officials say was a suicide attack targeting a United Nations security convoy. Police spokesman said several people had died and more injured in the attack by a suicide bomber in an SUV full of explosives. Al-Shabaab regularly carries out bombings and gun assaults in Somalia, but this blast was so large that the walls of a nearby primary and secondary school collapsed. Yusuf Hussain is the school's director. He speaks on the damage done.
7 pupils were wounded in the explosion near the school. Some classrooms were destroyed in the explosion. You can see that some of the school and buses were also damaged in the explosion.
The attack near the K4 junction in the heart of the capital left cars mangled and sent a plume of smoke into the sky. Witnesses said gunfire echoed around the scene. It is not immediately clear if any UN personnel were among those killed or injured. Local media reports said the blast occurred during the morning rush hour near the busy Kilometer 4 junction.
Well, let's get more on this. Joining us now is Mohamed Kahiye, a Somali journalist in Mogadishu. Thank you for speaking to us. What is the update at this time? The bomb is said to have targeted a convoy of private security firm known to be working for the UN.
Thank you for having me in your program. According to Somali police spokesman, at least 8 people lost their lives and 17 others were wounded, including 13 students whose school was damaged by the blast. The police said that the suicide bomber targeted UN convoy, which was passing the area. But there is no comment from the UN and also the African Union. The school was damaged and social media images showed blown out classrooms and debris scattered across the desk in the school. Most of the casualties were small business owners and passerbys in the area.
Fortunate school children were caught up in this, just like you have said. Their school building was destroyed, and we heard from the principal there that 7 students were injured. How is the government handling this latest attack?
To control these attacks, especially during this electioneering period, where the Al-Shabaab threatened to intensify attacks against those taking part in the process. But the Somali security agencies, in support from the EU peacekeepers, including the Nigerians, are on standby and patrolling the streets to ensure the safety of the ongoing poll process.
Well, Al-Shabaab is known to carry out frequent attacks in Somalia. Talk to us about, this security, the challenge this poses to the country and especially the elections, just like you've mentioned.
Yes, the militant group Al-Shabaab, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, carries out frequent attacks in Somalia with the aim of overthrowing the government. In July, the leader of the group, in an audio message, threatened to disrupt the ongoing parliamentary elections in the country, particularly warning the electoral delegates not to take part in the process. But so far, apart from the suicide attacks like today, the polls has been going smoothly across the country.
All right then, Mohamed Kahiye, Somali journalist, thank you for speaking to us.
I appreciate and thank you for having me.
Well, a Somali citizen is one of the two people who survived a fatal attempt to cross the English Channel that separates the UK from France. French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin made this known, identifying the other survivor as an Iraqi citizen. At least 27 people drowned on Wednesday as they were trying to make the journey in a small inflatable boat. Their identities are not yet known. Well, it's the worst tragedy since the area became a common crossing point for migrants in 2018. 4 suspected people smugglers have now been arrested. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is calling for an immediate end to the fighting in Ethiopia. Mr. Guterres, who is visiting Colombia to mark 5 years since a peace deal was signed with former Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, asked the Ethiopian government to follow the example. Mr. Guterres said a ceasefire would allow for an inter-Ethiopian dialogue to resolve the crisis and allow Ethiopia to contribute again to the stability of the region. It comes as the U.S. warns that there is no military solution to the conflict in the country amid an escalation in fighting. It also follows reports that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has joined the front line where government forces are battling with the Tigray rebel fighters who say they are still advancing towards the capital, Addis Ababa. In the meantime, Ethiopia has expelled 4 Irish diplomats because of Ireland's stance on the ongoing conflict in the Horn of Africa nation. A statement from Ireland's foreign ministry says the 4 have been given a week to leave the country. However, the ambassador and 1 other member of the embassy staff have been allowed to stay. The minister said that Ethiopian authorities had explained that the expulsions were because of Ireland's position on the conflict and humanitarian crisis that has left millions in urgent need of food and assistance. He said he regretted the move, but that the embassy would remain open. Ireland has had an embassy in Ethiopia since 1994. Still on Ethiopia, tens of thousands of residents in Addis Ababa have signed up for defense groups after rebellious Tigrayan forces threatened to march on to the capital. These volunteers say they are ready to defend Ethiopia's capital, even as TPLF fighters are said to be advancing. 2,000 people have received additional training in conducting searches and assisting the police. They've also helped capture weapons and direct police to suspects.
The clunk of heavy sticks on Addis Ababa's pavement means the defense group is coming. These are volunteers among tens of thousands of them who joined such groups after Tigrayan forces threatened to march on the Ethiopian capital. Dressed in bright orange vests, they searched pedestrians and cars for weapons and suspects. Among them, 55-year-old construction worker Getachew Megasa.
I am now safeguarding my city with a stick, but if it is required, they give me a weapon. I will do the same.
And it wouldn't be the first time the former soldier has taken up arms against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. He spent 12 years in the military under the Marxist Derg regime, toppled in 1991 by the Tigrayan rebels and their allies. The TPLF then dominated government for nearly 3 decades, ruling with increasing authoritarianism.
There is no way that the TPLF will be able to rule Ethiopia again. I am happy about it because previously we were a few and we used to cover a large area. We didn't know who is who, but now everyone is involved in safeguarding its surroundings.
Getachew says he's working with the certainty that there are infiltrators in the city working for the TPLF.
Given the current situation, we work with certainty that there are infiltrators and there are those in our area who are working for the junta. There are plenty of them who have lived with us for years.
Tigrayan forces have recaptured most of Tigray and pushed into neighboring regions, prompting Abiy to declare a 6-month state of emergency. It allows suspects to be detained without trial for the length of the proclamation and house-to-house searches without warrants. Some Tigrayans say they are being unfairly targeted because of their ethnicity.
Outgoing United Nations Libya mediator Jan Kubis is warning that not holding planned elections in the country could greatly deteriorate the situation and lead to further division and conflict. The UN Political Forum last year demanded parliamentary and presidential elections on December 24 as part of a roadmap to end Libya's civil war. The first round of presidential vote is set for December 24. However, the parliamentary election has been delayed to January or February 2022.
Libya continues to be at a delicate and fragile junction of its path to unity and stability through the ballot boxes. While risks associated with the ongoing political polarization around the elections are evident and present, not holding the elections could gravely deteriorate the situation in the country and could lead to further division and conflict. As demonstrated by the high number of registered voters and candidates, the Libyan people are yearning for an opportunity to elect their representatives and give them a mandate to govern Libya through democratic legitimacy. To create conditions for this, on the 17th of November 2021, I tendered my resignation. In the resignation letter to the Secretary General, I also confirmed my readiness to continue as the Special Envoy for a transitional period, and that, in my opinion, should cover the electoral period, to ensure business continuity, provided that it is a feasible option.
Morocco and Israel have signed a defense memorandum in Rabat, opening the way for possible military sales and cooperation after the countries upgraded diplomatic ties last year. The document was signed during a visit by Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz, who was scheduled to hold talks with Morocco's Defense Administration Minister and other officials. Departing for Rabat on Tuesday, Gantz told reporters he was embarking on the first formal visit by an Israeli defense minister to Morocco, implicit acknowledgement of discrete relations dating back decades. All sources in Morocco say the classified MOU does not stipulate specific defense deals, but rather provides a legal and regulatory framework for such deals in the future. President of the Africa Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, is giving insight into the future of the impact of battery renewable energy value chain and the contribution of Africa because of her natural endowment seen in abundance in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was speaking in a virtual address at the opening of the DRC Africa Business Forum.
Africa is at the bottom of the global battery and electric vehicle industry. Now, we must not simply extract minerals. We must add value to them. A recent study by the African Development Bank Group and its partners confirmed that the Democratic Republic of Congo can leverage its abundant cobalt resources and hydroelectric power to become a low-cost and low-emissions producer of lithium-ion battery cathode precursor materials. But there's a lot of work to be done before we get there. Firstly, we must scale up infrastructure investments and develop the necessary policies and regulatory frameworks to attract and domesticate investments in this emerging industry, as well as upgrade available skills for sustainability. Secondly, we must do everything to ensure the African Continental Free Trade Area gets up to speed as soon as possible. Countries should adopt and implement policies that foster services trade and growth by adjusting trade regulations, reducing barriers, and promoting non-discriminatory measures. Thirdly, we must back intra-African investment and provide incentives to encourage investment in the battery and electric vehicle value chain in Africa.
We Continue here in Nigeria, where internally displaced persons from the Bakassi camp in Maiduguri, Borno State, are moving out in droves, ending their 7-year displacement from their ancestral homes. Their exit is sequel to a 10-day ultimatum issued by the state government to the over 6,000 households that have occupied the camp since 2014.
An uncompleted government estate along Maiduguri-Damboa Road allocated to IDPs from Mongunu, Goza, Guzamala and Mate local government areas, the Bakassi camp has accommodated about 36,000 persons for 7 years. However, it's time to say goodbye to the stopgap arrangement as the IDPs dismantle tents and other makeshift shelter ahead of their exit. With the liberation of most local territories in Borno State, the government is now keen on ending displacement in the state. Governor Babagana Zulum had paid an unscheduled visit to the camp and shared a severance package that included food items and cash to the IDPs with an ultimatum to vacate.
They have given us 100,000 naira. I bought building materials worth 40,000. I spent 10,000 to transport them. Then the remaining 50,000 will be used for buying our other needs like food and to transport ourselves back to Mongunu.
About 40% of Goza and Mongunu IDPs have already complied, according to camp officials.
We have total population of 6,973 households. Now, about 1,200 there have left.
Compliance is slower in other parts of the camp. 5 days into the 10-day ultimatum, the IDPs are already asking for an extension for various reasons. There are also reports of flashes of attack in Mate, a concern for the would-be returnees.
Currently, there are people who were not here when he shared money. Some had gone to their farms because herdsmen were encroaching their farms located around Yobe State access. If they leave it, herders will consume their produce.
We want to go to town and look for our own place to stay, but we can't go to Mate where there's security problems. Who will go there? Nobody. We pray the government listens to our plea for a grace of 5 extra days.
The state government says its intentions are honorable and it will do all that is necessary to protect the people.
The government is not intent in exposing anybody to any hazard. Should there be any problem at any given time and at any given point, the government is equally ever ready to bring them to safety. And of course, also, while there, they are also equally going to be given the protection that they are required so that they are not just taken back to their countries, at their ancestral home and get abandoned.
Whether the IDPs whose status is about to change decide to go back to their ancestral homes or settle in the host community in Maiduguri, it is clear that the government is not going back on its resolve to shut down the camp. Even though relocations is voluntary, exiting the camp is not.
The Gambia's final report of a probe into alleged human rights violations during the 22-year rule of former President Yahya Jammeh is set to be handed to the government. The release had previously been delayed because some sections had not been completed. The country's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission says it will submit the report to President Adama Barrow, who has 1 month to study the text and then submit copies to the National Assembly, the UN Secretary General, and also make a summary of it public. The president is also expected to issue a detailed outline of how the government plans to implement the recommendations of the findings within 6 months. Nearly 400 witnesses gave chilling accounts of alleged state-sponsored torture, rape and enforced disappearances they experienced during Mr. Jammeh's tenure. Director of the UN Institute for Disarmament Research, Robin Gay, says small arms trafficking is undermining peace and security. He was speaking to the UN Security Council, adding that diversion of diversion and trafficking of arms is what is destabilizing communities and escalating situations of insecurity. Well, the Danish military says the crew of one of its warships operating off West Africa have killed 4 pirates in a gun battle. A statement said the frigate Esbern Snare, accompanied by a helicopter, approached a speeding motorboat south of Nigeria on Wednesday. There were 8 men on board with ladders and other tools often used by pirates to board ships. After warning shots were ignored, the suspected pirates opened fire on Danish troops. The military said 4 of the pirates died and 1 was injured, and there were no Danish casualties. Several countries have deployed ships to the region after more than 130 sailors were taken from vessels in the region last year. Kenyans are still reacting to the government's directive that residents must show proof of COVID-19 vaccination by December 21st to access services. While some businesses welcomed the order, others criticized it, saying low vaccination rates made it unrealistic, as only 8.8% of people are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 in Kenya so far. Health Minister Mutahi Kagwe made the announcement that's affecting schools, transport services, immigration and other state offices, hotels, bars, restaurants, national parks and wildlife reserves. The government is now expected to start a 10-day mass vaccination campaign on Friday.
It's going to be difficult because who is going to implement it? Me as a business owner, if I'm told that I cannot allow customers and yet I am in business paying my licenses and I'm being told I should not allow customers, I don't think it will be practical. Some of us might want to be compliant, others will not. So it will create some unfair competition, you see. Because I won't turn away a customer, yet I am here to make some living. Period of 8 months, all right? So we just opened, we're trying to bring the customers back. Again, for me to try and tell these customers that we can't have you because of perhaps you don't have, you've been vaccinated maybe once, there is a second dose you need to go to, I'll tell you go away and come back another time. I don't think that's going to be practical.
A new ride-hailing company is helping people with disabilities run their errands by offering them comfortable transport. In a country where millions of people with disabilities say they struggle with accessibility and easy movement. That's in Egypt, Cairo.
His diagnosis of multiple sclerosis back in 2006 and his reduced ability to carry out daily tasks was what got Yo Yagmor thinking of ways to facilitate his transport across his hometown, Cairo. Yagmor, who now moves in a wheelchair, used to rely mainly on the help of his family and friends to run errands due to a lack of alternatives and infrastructure set up to assist people like him in Egypt. But his new company, Rahti, which he founded in 2019, offers the opportunity to people with disabilities to independently move around without much help.
The idea behind Rahti is that we provide comfort and freedom in transportation to people like me, people with disabilities. We are not limited in the places we go. Instead, we can be transported to any place we need. And even if it's not out of need, but just for fun, to be part of the society, to go out, have fun, work, go to the doctor's office, live a practically normal life, instead of having restrictions because of the limits imposed by our illness or the existing methods of transportation.
A quick phone call 24 hours ahead is all that is needed to book a ride for the duration of the customer's choice. The company so far has 2 vehicles designed to securely fit wheelchairs. Yahwa and his co-founder Khalid Nasser are working on a minibus that can transport up to 20 passengers in wheelchairs at a time.
We currently have 2 vehicles and a minibus that can take up to 20 people in wheelchairs. Our goal and vision is for people with disabilities to live a very normal life without being a burden onto anyone, but instead become productive and work, maybe even with us in the company, because nobody knows better than us what service we need.
Customers like Rafiq Aziz says the company has made his mobility easy to run his errands.
في الأول أنا كنت بلاقي صعوبة إن أنا أعمل كل مشاويري وفي الغالب
I used to find it very difficult to run my errands, so I used to cancel many of them. But with this service, it has become very easy. It enables me to run all of my errands.
The company also aims to hire people with disabilities to work with them because, according to Yarmo, nobody better than us knows what services we need.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.